This is Hashtag Finance, presented to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange, the exchange for entrepreneurs. With your host, Anil Mall.
Thanks for tuning into another edition of Hashtag Finance, brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. I'm Anil Mall, and today I am talking to Anthony Brown. Anthony is the CEO of AMPD Technologies, which is listed on the CSE. We had a chance to talk to Anthony about a year ago when the company had just listed with us. So welcome back to Hashtag Finance, Anthony.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Anil.
Of course. How are you? How are things?
Oh, doing great. Doing great.
I see you here in sunny Vancouver, Granville Island at the Waterfall Building.
Yeah, well, of course, this is a virtual background, but that is the Waterfall Building where DC1 is hosted. That's where AMP's first green data center is hosted here in Vancouver. That waterfall feature you see behind me, incidentally, that is that's water that's generated by the air conditioning systems inside the data center. And in the summertime, on a nice sunny day like today, we pull the ambient air from outside from beside that waterfall. So even in the summertime, the air we pull into the data center is cooled. So it's just part of how we build green data centers.
You've built a whole green ecosystem around your data center.
Oh yeah, we capture the heat. Like, this is something that happened fairly shortly after we went public. I'm not sure if we've been able to discuss it back on our previous call, but the data center is green. It captures the heat generated by all the servers to heat that whole surrounding building. So it's full of shops, condos, restaurants, and in the wintertime, that's all heated by the servers in the data center. And in the summertime, we generate clean drinking water and use that as part of the waterfall feature behind me, and pull in ambient air from beside it for cooler air. So we're looking at all the different ways that we can make it possible to bring our high performance computing to the edge, to the urban center, and do so greenly.
So you guys say you're building a next generation infrastructure company. That's the kind of the type.
Yeah, next generation digital infrastructure company.
Digital infrastructure. Thanks for that correction. So why don't we begin off, Anthony? There might be some of our viewers who didn't catch you the first time you were on here, might not necessarily know about your company. Why don't we begin by you giving us a brief intro into AMP Technologies and what you guys are doing?
Sure. Well, actually, what we were just discussing about is really what it's all about. It boils down to our tagline: high performance computing at the edge. Now, what that means is that there's been an evolution of digital infrastructure over the years. We start off with telephones back in the day as kind of the first digital infrastructure. We then moved to television and cable. We got coax cables, and eventually the internet comes out, and we have ISPs, guys like AOL and Comcast. And the current generation we're in right now is cloud. And that's where companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon and many others, by the way, those are not the only three, contrary to popular belief. The cloud is actually serviced by a lot of different companies. But this commodity cloud, which kind of evolved from e-commerce and YouTube and video streaming and that sort of thing, really isn't ideal for running things that are latency sensitive. So things like eSports, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all the great stuff that everybody's excited about coming down the pipe from a digital technology perspective, just doesn't run as well as it should on commodity cloud. So what they need is something called high performance computing at the edge. And that's what we do. So high performance computing versus commodity computing, that's the first part of the tagline, is really because we do everything in hardware. So we're hardware switched and hardware firewalled. We're array-based, blazing fast storage. In fact, we just recently made an announcement around a partnership with Intel, where we're developing their Intel Optane NVMe over Fabric. I know that all sounds very technical, but what all that means is super blazing fast access to data, right? We put all of that together, and then we put it right in the urban center and directly dark fiber connect our end users to the data center. So they're not accessing it over the internet, they're accessing it through their own private fiber connection. When you combine those two things, the high performance compute architecture, and then putting it at the edge, putting it in the urban center, you mitigate latency, you get rid of latency, and that's what allows you to be able to run all those fantastic applications. And that's really what AMP boils down to. That's the next generation of digital infrastructure.
Got it. Anthony, why don't we jump a little bit? Let's talk a little bit about the overall global gaming computing space that you guys are in. Do you want to maybe give us a briefing on that and how big the potential is in that market?
Absolutely. So this is actually quite simple to describe. What we do, this high performance computing at the edge infrastructure, applies across a lot of sectors, multi-billion-dollar sectors. So video games and eSports are certainly one of those areas, and that's a multi-billion-dollar sector. I think it's sitting at around 120 billion, somewhere in that range. You'll have to do some fact checking on me on that, but it's somewhere in that range. Virtual reality is now not only being adopted from an entertainment perspective, but it's also being adopted by companies to do things like digital twinning. So, for example, one of the projects that we announced is where we built out a digital twin of an airline manufacturing plant in virtual reality using our platform. We did that with the Canadian Digital Technology Supercluster. So Industry 4.0, video games, and then another big sector, animation and visual effects. So when it comes to rendering, when it comes to doing things like virtual production, and that's another recent announcement we made with our partnership with Versatile Media. And it can't be underestimated. Virtual production is a huge paradigm shift for the industry. The impact of virtual production is, I'd say, as big as, it's the biggest change to movie making since the advent of the computer. We're really changing everything on how production is made. We're using virtual reality, motion capture, real-time render to capture real-life things and put them into this metaverse that can then be used to shoot the scenes for the movies or the television shows, can be used to create virtual reality environments, concerts. The usage of it is absolutely immense.
It's immense.
So when you apply all of those things together, virtual reality, content creation, artificial intelligence, we're using, for example, our GPU compute platform with variational AI to be able to do research into COVID-19 therapeutics. And they're using new AI technology with our platform to be able to find new drugs to help treat COVID-19. The sectors that this addresses is immense. Each one of them is multi-billion dollars, and we're doing it with kind of a single product set that currently is not being provided to the market by the existing hyperscalers, the big cloud providers.
Interesting. So you guys are well positioned there. You also mentioned a little bit about, obviously your recent developments, the partnerships. You guys have actually just come out with two major, big news releases, I should say, earlier this month. One was a partnership with AccelByte. Mm-hmm. And then the other was the signing of the letter of engagement with Versatile Media. Why don't we respectively jump into each of those, and you give us a little bit of info on what those partnerships mean, not just for your company, but how they would translate to your shareholders.
Sure. So, well, let's talk about AccelByte first. Yeah. So AccelByte, what they do is they offer live game services to video game developers and publishers to be able to bring their games online and run them. Now, part of doing that is a service that they call Armada, where they can automatically spin up the game servers where the end user is to be able to mitigate latency for those customers, right? So when you're playing Fortnite or whatever the case may be, if it's on an Armada game server, it's going to be spun up in your local territory. And AMPD is one of those providers that are providing that. So we've joined the likes of Amazon and so on, and now AMP servers are in that Armada list. Now, obviously, because we are high performance computing at the edge, we would tend to think that we're a little bit faster and a little lower latency. So our servers will basically get automatically picked more often, but it's a new partnership, so the proof will be in the pudding. But you can now access games that are run on Armada with AccelByte on the on AMPD servers. So that's really what that boils down to. It's a partnership. We bring customers to them; they bring customers to us.
Yeah.
So now versatile media, that's a little bit more complicated, because versatile media represents this big paradigm shift that I mentioned earlier around virtual production. So if people have seen maybe The Mandalorian from Disney, the new Star Wars television show, maybe they've seen, you know, The Lion King, things like this, those shows are now using this new virtual production technology to make animation and visual effects. So basically what they do is they use they bring together game technology, things like Unreal Engine, real-time render, the use of GPUs, graphics processing units, into the animation and visual effects pipeline. And what that allows them to do is they can broadcast this real-time rendered environment on big LCD screens surrounding the actors, and the actors are placed right into the environment. So when they're shooting it, the special effects, the background, wherever they could be on any planet at any time, is all there. It's all being captured in real time. And the director can sit there and go, you know what? Let's move that mountain over there to the left a little bit. You know, put a tree right over there. Let's see how that looks. Hey, let's change it from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 p.m. They can have an hour-long, you know, they can have a 6-hour-long magic hour shoot, you know, at that perfect lighting and everything else. Yeah, that is something. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I just got excited there, but I was going to say it's a lot better than the old days when, you know, when you were making animated movies or trying to do this kind of stuff. The actor would be sitting there talking to either a puppet or a sock or an orange that would be a placeholder.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see how they can change things around in real time. But I'll let you continue on. I apologize to get
it really is a giant leap forward in how they're going to make these movies. The impact, I mean, is, you know, don't get me wrong, I could talk about the tech all day. It's super cool. You know, they can actually put on a virtual reality headset and shoot the scene with a virtual camera.
Oh, wow.
Like in virtual reality, things like that. I mean, like, how cool is that? I mean, how much fun would that be to do? Yeah. But putting that aside, the impact to the industry from a financial perspective is huge as well. It costs a lot less money to make a movie or a television show in this way. It's a lot more iterative. They can do a lot more things with it. So that the way it used to work was, as you say, they'd have the green screen and they, you know, have a bunch of people wearing, you know, black leotards with little ping pong balls on them, and, you know, they'd have a little, you know, placeholder for the dragon they were talking to or whatever it might be, and they would, you know, shoot the scene. That would then go off to all the artists that will go and make, you know, the dragon and make the environment and everything else based on the description given by the director. About 3 months later or so, they come back and here you go, what do you think of the scene? Well, at this point the director goes, well, that's not exactly what I was thinking, I need you to change this or that. And then again, it goes away. You know, a few weeks later, he can come back and see the scene again, right? That's not with this technology. They shoot the scene. The director and the cinematographer are right there. They're capturing the scene live. They can make those iterations on the fly. Yeah. So the amount of iterations they can do, the speed at which it takes to get these products to market. Like, so if you had a project that would take 2 or 3 years, it might only take 1 year to actually get done. So this is a huge step forward. And actually, the one last step, the one last kind of impact with it is it takes a much smaller team and a lot less travel. And so the impact of COVID on the industry really does, you know, this really lends a lot of solutions to the problems associated with COVID.
Definitely. I mean, the pandemic's something that has affected all of us in the last, I mean, it'd be even fair to say all of 2020 now that we're going into September here. So it's great to see that companies will still continue using this technology to be able to make movies, make games, all the other industries that it's applicable to be used in, but also stay creative at the same time and not lose out on that front.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the stocks and so on, video game companies, animation companies, content creators are doing very well because, that's what a lot of people have to do. You're stuck in your house. What are you going to do? Well, I'll play video games and watch movies. That industry is going to continue to grow, and being the company that supplies the picks and shovels for this new gold rush of virtual production is a really good place to be.
I love that analogy.
Oh, well, I mean, actually, it's pretty obvious analogy, and I know it's an old one. I think it was my father who actually first told me, hey, son, don't be the guy going out getting going for the gold rush, be the guy selling the picks and shovels. And that's, 30 years ago.
It's applicable to all industries when you put it that way.
It is, but I mean, when you're in an industry that's really content driven, right, and hit based, right? So it's, they go out and make tons of video games, they go out and make tons of movies, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. But in our case, it doesn't matter whether they strike gold or not. They have to pay the bill to create that content. Yeah, it's a good place to be. Yeah, absolutely.
So Anthony, those two that we just talked about, AccelByte, the letter of engagement with Versatile Media, those were two of the most recent news releases.
Yeah, they just came out in the last week or so. Yeah.
Were there any more points on Versatile, or did you touch on all of those? Because I kind of wanted to talk about some of your other partnerships as well. Because since we've chatted with you about it almost a year ago, you guys have been very busy. There's been a lot more, and not just these two. So I kind of wanted you to touch on some of those as well, and let us know and the audience know where you're at and how those have come about.
Sure. I mean, look, I could spend all day talking about virtual production. It is just so super cool. And it's a great deal with Versatile. We're basically building all of the infrastructure for the studio, all of the remote render, all of that sort of stuff. So it's and it's one of the first ones being built in Canada. So it's exciting. But you're right. There's been
here in Vancouver, right? It's being built
here in Vancouver. Yeah, here in Vancouver.
How many square footage was it? It's huge.
12,000 square feet. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. It'll have two. I think it's a little over 4,000 square foot sound stages that will all be motion capture, virtual reality. I mean, again, I can't wait to play with the thing. I mean, this is going to be so much fun.
I remember it was in late 1999, maybe 2000, when Vancouver Film School was one of the first ones that had opened up their studio, their school out here, I should say, and after that, it just blew up.
Yeah, I know, and actually, as is illustrated by the MOU that we signed with Capilano University, we're seeing an adoption of these sorts of things. I mean, that the announcement we made was around the creative technology community, the CTC, a building which they're basically donating for us to build a joint academic and industry partnership of a studio, and it now looks like it's pretty likely it would involve virtual production, and so yeah, I mean the schools are also somebody who we're working with to help bring in the talent and help develop that technology. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened since we spoke. It has been a while. We announced the opening of our first data center, DC1. Here in Vancouver. This, again, the Waterfall Building behind me. We announced Bardell, our first render client. So these are the guys that make Rick and Morty. They render dragon prints on our servers, and actually Dragon Prints just won a daytime Emmy. Pretty cool stuff to be actually helping to create that kind of content.
Absolutely.
We announced a Supercluster project where we're doing digital twinning of an airline manufacturing plant using virtual reality simulation tools to actually take a full digital twin of an airline manufacturing plant. And That's a Canadian digital technology supercluster project that also runs in DC1. We announced Variational AI, where we have a GPU platform that they use to do artificial intelligence research. And in their case, right now, they're doing research into therapeutics, drugs that can have can help treat COVID-19. And so that sort of research is going on in DC1, and that feels pretty good to be able to try and do a little something to help with the current situation. It's been busy. That being said, generally speaking, we're dealing with fairly large deals. In most cases, multi-million-dollar deals that the client signs up with for multiple years in annual or 3-year contracts. And so it takes a little while to close those deals down. There's a fairly long sales cycle. It's worth it because you end up with a very big deal that's very impactful to the company and lasts for up to 3 years. But they take a little while to close. So sometimes there's a little bit of a delay in getting more news out. And so it's great to have an opportunity like this to be able to, talk about the latest releases and reiterate some of the things that are going on and just make sure people understand that, we're very active. The company's growing very quickly. As we announce more and more of these deals on a more and more regular basis, people will get to see it. But, there's a lot that goes into that. We used to be a company prior to going public that primarily just, sold that infrastructure. We didn't host it. We didn't run a data center. We just sold it directly to the end user. So we retooled the company prior to going public to be this monthly recurring revenue company. And we increased our monthly recurring revenue, as we announced fairly recently, tenfold. That's pretty good growth, I'd have to say.
I was going to say that's great value for your company right there. Just that little change.
Yeah. So it takes time to do those sorts of things. To launch the data center, to bring on a new sales team. We announced our new VP of Sales, Chris Best. We announced our new representative for Montreal, Pierre Couture. We just recently hired another rep, Jeff O'Donoghue, to focus on the digital media market. We've been building up. You got to go and see the new website. A ton of work's been done on that. We have a whole IR section. Our social media is now up and running. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We have a whole IR section on the AMPD website. You can sign up for the news, get all the latest announcements. There's a lot going on.
Well, speaking of the website, why don't you let them know where they can go find out about you guys? And
right.
We'll throw in your social media channels.
Well, you're gonna put down right down where I'm pointing. Right, you're gonna write down on the bottom of it. Okay, there we go. Yeah,
definitely check the show notes. The link to the website, social media links, all of that stuff will be on there. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it's www.amped.tech. www.ampd.tech. And all kinds of information there. Just go to the investor section. You can sign up to get the news. You can download our latest investor deck, see the financials, all of that fun stuff.
Awesome. You touched a little bit on your team there, but I wanted to obviously talk a little bit about your team members. But before we get into that, Anthony, let's talk about your background, because you're so passionate about this industry. You're so knowledgeable about it. How did you get into this?
Well, I'm knowledgeable because I'm old. I've been doing this for a long time. I may not look it, but I've been doing this for now somewhere close to 30 years. AMPD is actually my 4th multi-million-dollar company, and it really kind of starts, as far as technology is concerned, with a company that I started way back in 2000, a company called Seven Group, and Seven Group very quickly took over the digital media market. We had almost 70% market share for supplying all of the technology, the digital infrastructure for making video games, movies, and television shows.
You said 70%?
70%, yeah.
Grant
you, that's an estimate. I honestly, we never ran it, but I mean, now we're talking about my old company, and I'm mentioning customers from them. So this, just so you know. But back with Seven Group, we had everybody. We had Technicolor, Universal, Disney, EA, Ubisoft, Activision, you know, pretty much anybody you can think of was a client of Seven Group. And so that experience of being able to understand what was involved in building out the digital infrastructure for those studios really helped us to do what we do today. And then the other thing we did is we kind of got on the other side of the glass and became our own video game publishing company. We actually rolled Seven Group into a company called Infinite Game Publishing, and we published a very popular game called MechWarrior Online. MechWarrior Online was actually one of North America's first esports games. AAA, you know, high-end quality content. It was on the cover of PC Gamer like 3 or 4 times. Rated number 19 in the top 25 shooters by PC Gamer. You know, it was a very successful game. And Amped is kind of the culmination of those two experiences. Having supplied digital infrastructure to help create content, and then having actually run a live latency sensitive esports platform for a popular AAA esports game is really what enabled us to create what we have today at Amped. So, you know, I got into this at a pretty young age. I've always been interested in technology. I've always been an entrepreneur. And, you know, basically you combine tech with a little bit of entrepreneurship and you get me.
Well, hey, no, you guys are doing an excellent job. I know we talked, or you touched on a few points of some of your key team members. I see a recent announcement. You guys added onto your advisory board a gentleman by the name of Stephen Hynes. He's a real estate developer.
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit of background on that, and also, you know, if I could for a second, I just, you know, I'm so tremendously proud of my team. We have such an incredible team that has kind of been there and done that before across the board, right? So, you know, our CTO, Don Buston, he was the CTO over at Infinite Game Publishing. You know, he was the guy who helped architect that platform. You know, he's worked for Fortune 500 companies. He's worked for startups. He's, you know, always been that kind of paratrooper that tech paratrooper that you send in, a tech commando to go in and solve the really tough problems. And I've known him for, you know, coming on 30 some odd years now. So to have him on our team is just fantastic. Our CSO, James Hursthouse, you know, he was most recently, he was one of the executive directors, or he was the executive director of DigiBC, the local industry association for digital media. Prior to that, he was the CEO of a pretty large, you know, I think about 160 person video game developer here in Vancouver called Roadhouse. And back in 2004, he actually started a company called Online Game Services, Inc. that hosted some of the first multiplayer online games. So, you know, these guys, you know, have been there, done that. And to have people like that on the team is immense. And Stephen is another one of those guys. So Stephen is a real estate developer. That building that's in my background, that was a building that he designed and built 20 years ago with the intention of having a data center at the heart of the building to supply the heat and do those things. You know, that was absolutely visionary. Now, it's only once Amped came on board and kind of took over the data center to work with Stephen that we've really been able to fully utilize that green technology. But, you know, this guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to building these types of buildings. And so when it comes to a next generation digital infrastructure company, it's not only the servers that you're looking at, it's not only all that compute, it's also where it's housed. And with Stephen, we have the ability to build data centers like DC1 across the world and continue to build out this kind of resilient, high-performance compute infrastructure at the edge and do it in a green way, a sustainable way, and be able to really be that core of a smart city. And Stephen is really a key enabler for that.
Got it. It's a very strategic placement then. Obviously, I'm here in Vancouver, and our viewers that are in Vancouver or local would definitely know that this is the Waterfall Building that's in Granville Island or just outside Granville Island. But why don't you talk to us about why this building is so important and the whole sort of concept behind it.
Well, okay, first of all, just on an aside for a second, because it's cool. If you're a Battlestar Galactica fan, there's, I don't know, something like 20 scenes from Battlestar Galactica that was filmed with this building. That little kind of pyramid looking thing in the background, keep an eye out for it. It's in Battlestar Galactica. So there's a little bit of a cool factor there. So what really makes it important though is that I have kind of covered some of this already in our conversation today, but by capturing the heat to heat the surrounding building, by creating clean drinking water, by using control systems to be able to manage the environment very minutely, very granularly within that data center, we make it possible to be able to run efficiently while in an urban center. And what you're seeing a lot of the big cloud providers do is they go and buy data centers that are way out in the middle of nowhere, near the biggest power source. Right? How can we get power cheaper? How can we do those sorts of things? And what that does, though, is it creates latency because you have to, reach out into the boonies to access these data centers. Our data centers being at part of the urban fabric really is what makes that at the edge part of our tagline work. And to be able to make that work, we need to be extremely efficient with the power, with the resources required to run those servers. And so we've made our data centers so efficient through this technology that it's perfectly reasonable to be able to get very similar kind of hosting costs in an urban center as to what you would get out in the boonies. And so that's what really makes it important. It's going to be part of our fabric moving forward. Think of it this way. Let's say you're going to buy a condo, and you're going to buy a condo downtown, and you find out that, hey, listen, the game servers for Fortnite are in the basement. You're gonna get a 10 gig internet connection, right? Does that sound like a good place to buy a condo if you're a millennial?
If you're a gamer, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Closest to the basement.
Yeah. Listen, you're gonna be able to run virtual reality with all your friends in your new condo, because you're in this new wired, high performance compute at the edge environment. You're going to get things like augmented reality glasses that are using AI to do facial recognition. The amount of applications for this are just so ridiculously immense, and it's such an obvious path to undertake that we're really pleased to be kind of at the forefront of it.
Got it. So you guys have had a strong start to 2020 going into September right now. So what can we expect for you guys to close the year off?
Oh, come on. Well, there's only so many things I can say on that front. What can I say that's not going to be, talking about forward-looking statements? Well, look, I can say that the pipeline's very strong. We have a lot of projects that we're working on across multiple sectors. So we're increasing to focus more and more on the digital media, virtual production, render, remote workstation sectors. We're running a lot of R&D in our lab, and coming up with newer technologies to address things like remote computing for COVID. AI research, and being able to increase the power for that. We're looking at building more data centers. There's a lot of things that are without, and I'm hoping you'll be able to edit this later if there's anything I say that I'm not supposed to, but there's a lot on the go, and I would say just keep your eyes out for the news, and as those deals come in, as those new initiatives kick off, as those new products get launched, you'll be hearing more and more about us as we go forward.
I don't mean to be getting anyone in trouble here with any info that's not public and can't be out there, but I think you covered most of the bases. To anybody watching, I definitely encourage you to at least go visit the AMP Technologies website, take a look at some of the stuff that they're working on and have worked on. Follow them on all their social media channels, and feel free and reach out to them through their website if you have any questions or are looking for details. Anthony, I wanna close off. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of cool things in this a podcast of ours.
Yeah.
I want to talk hypothetically about, obviously we see so much happening within not only the gaming space, virtual reality, augmented reality. Give us some tidbits on what are some of the things that are being worked on, not specifically from AMP, but in the
Yeah.
general space that are kind of going to blow our minds off.
That, you know what, that I love talking about that stuff, and I've been known to bring this up in multiple conversations, but there is this kind of concept of a virtual reality universe that everybody can plug into and interact in. It's really well described by a movie and a book called Ready Player One. The movie was done by Steven Spielberg. And in that movie and in that book, they have this place called the Oasis, and this is a place that everybody can dial into, can basically jack into, whatever you want to call it, and interact with a completely fully realized photorealistic digital universe.
It's like The Sims on steroids.
Yeah, well, and this is going to come out. This is going to actually happen. Now, it does require high performance computing at the edge to work, just saying. But the virtual production that we were talking about earlier, that's kind of an interesting step along the way, because they're already now capturing real world, people and creating full photorealistic 3D environments that they can display. So, we're really just at the beginning of the creation of this whole metaverse that human beings are going to be able to interact with, and not just play games, but do business, have relationships, watch concerts, and think about how much this is accelerated because of the impact of experiencing a pandemic as a society, right? We have to do this social distancing. Now, you and I are right now talking on a video conference. You're sitting across the room from me in your couch. I'm virtually in front of the Waterfall Building. This even a few months ago, chances are, I would have come down to a studio, or something
we would
along
have
those
met
lines.
at a conference or something like that. Or wherever we were. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, right. And everybody's experiencing this now. So the acceleration towards the building of this metaverse, of this interactive virtual reality way to communicate and interact, is absolutely huge. And virtual production is only the first step along that train. Video games, are really one of the leading forefront technology creators on that front. Elon Musk, he's kind of famous for wanting to hire video game coders because they don't know what's impossible. I think that's pretty close to a direct quote from Elon. We're really seeing folks that are in that video games industry and in the digital media industry as a whole, bringing technology that applies to things like digital twinning of factories and self-driving cars and visualization of buildings, and it's pretty exciting times.
With something like that and the technology that's out there, if you can imagine it, someone out there in that space can create it.
Yeah, and all we need now is the tools that we need to be able to create the content, and a place to run it all, so that people can actually access it in a way that gives them that full experience. And I happen to know a really good company that's kind of building that.
That's right. And you can check out AMP Technology's website if you want to find out more details. Anthony, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the insight, not only into the general industry, but also with what you guys are doing. Thanks to you and your team for all the work that you guys put into it. Wish you guys nothing but success for the rest of the year and beyond. To anybody watching, if you find conversations and podcasts like this informative, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, I would definitely encourage you to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch not only myself, but mainly Anthony Brown, who is the CEO of AMP Technologies. Anthony, I look forward to our next chat where we can find out what else is happening in the space and see how much more you guys have grown.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it, Anil.
Cheers. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye now.
This has been an episode of #Finance brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. Please feel free to hit like and share this content and hit subscribe if you haven't already.